Well, again, everybody, my name is Vincent Walford, Dr. Vincent Walford. I am so honored to be here. I love working with graduate students. One of the main reasons why I love working with graduate students because I was once a graduate student, and there were some things that I felt like I wish I knew. I wish was available to me to kind of help me with my transition within being a graduate student. And so I want to say welcome to my colleagues. Again, thank you, Annie, for the introduction. And what we'll do is there's going to be some times where I'll just be talking. There'll be some times where I ask for some participation. Annie's going to be helpful in that I'm about to share my screen in a minute, so I won't be able to see people. But if there's some stuff that you need to, any questions you have, Annie will stop me. But I do love feedback, and just I look forward to doing the presentation. So for let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, and I think y'all can see that. And then I'm gonna go into presenter mode. Oh, I can see y'all still. Okay, very good. All righty. So before we get started, I wanted to do a mood check-in, right? And so I know over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of community and environment stuff that's been going on. There's been a lot of social unrest, a lot of just things that have been going on. We're still in a pandemic. You still are in grad school. There's still assignments due, lesson plans to make, all those type of things. And so I just want to get a check-in on a scale of 1 to 10. One feeling horrible, 10 feeling the best. Where are we? And if you want to say a word to describe how you're feeling, that would be helpful too. So, and again, this is only if you feel comfortable. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I would say right now I'm an 8. I think a word to describe how I feel is excited. I like doing presentations. I love doing outreach, and so just excited to be here. If you want to put some stuff in the chat, I don't know if you want to. Have you seen anything, Annie?
Yep, we're getting some sevens, six,
Okay,
a five,
okay, okay. And how are
four
people feeling?
sevens.
Uh, how are they
So,
saying that they're feeling?
so someone said they're feeling four because of voting rights. Someone says seven because the warm weather is helping.
Okay, okay, all right, cool.
Someone was a three for most of the week, but now a six.
Okay. Well, I hope I help you make it to that 6 and more than that. So, okay. Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and get started. How I wanted to do the presentation is one, I just want to for us to identify the type of stresses that we are all going through as grad students. And so when I say we, I'm putting myself in the space of a grad student, just because I felt like I'm not too far removed from that experience, and then of course we're all colleagues here. So just want to talk about those different stressors, and also really to normalize that most likely you're not the only one that is going through those struggles. And so hopefully by us naming them, you'll see that it's they're stressors, but all of us as grad students or former grad students are have been going through those things. Um, okay, so stressors during the pandemic. So when I think about the grad school experience, right? I knew that I was going to be moving to DC. I was going to be living in DC. I was going to be on Howard's campus. I was going to meet all these great people and have all these different mentors and mentees and all this stuff. So I did that free of a pandemic. But unfortunately, we're now in a pandemic, and now that brings a lot of different stressors, right? And so I wanted to address some of those stressors that probably a lot of us are going through. So number one, various types of loss, right? So I think about the loss of family members, right? I think the loss of some of our friends to COVID. I think about the loss of our grad school experience, the normal grad school experience of what we think to be a normal school experience. I think of the loss of some people with jobs, and or maybe not you personally, but friends and family members that that have experienced a lot of loss. So that is definitely a huge stressor. Social isolation and struggles with self care. One of the things, and I don't know if this comes out, but I am an extrovert, right? I love people. And so being in social isolation from people has even worn on me too, right? And so I've worked with a lot of other students who have said, Vincent, whether I'm an introvert, extrovert, whatever, I have really been struggling having to be by myself all the time. And I think that this has also been a struggle with self care. And we're going to talk about self care later on in the presentation, but I think that that's huge too, because a lot of people now are trying to find new ways to involve self care in their life. I know, for instance, I used to love going to the gym. I have not been into the gym in over a year, and that's mainly because of COVID. And so that has been now something I've had to do also to learn how to involve more self care activities in my day-to-day schedule that I'm not usually accustomed to. Managing physical and mental health conditions and or history of trauma. We're going to talk more about that. Navigating the virtual learning environment. How many people in here are zoomed out, right? I can say I'm zoomed out, I'm blue jeaned out, whatever, I'm out. And so and that's been something that we've all had to learn to grow from. One of the things is my mother is now into Zoom and FaceTime and things like that. And she's telling me like, Vincent, I don't see how people can do this all day at work. And I was like, well, I ain't, we ain't, some of us ain't got a choice, right? So just navigating that, learning that. And I know for some students who learn better in a very social environment, that has been a big burden to them being in graduate school and having to be on some type of device to do learning. We have racism, xenophobia, racial trauma for for communities of color. And so I just want to take a little time to talk about this too. One of the things that I feel came out in one of the many things that came out during this time of COVID is that a lot of racial tension. I remember at the very beginning when there was the video we saw of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement and just the division within our country. I started to think about elections and politics and all those things that are normally that we see on a regular basis, but because we're inside and we're not leaving, we're inundated or we're just being fed these same stories over and over again. And so I know a lot of people have struggled with just finding some type of normalcy around that. And then here we are in March, and a couple of weeks ago we had the incident we had the incident recently in Boulder, Colorado. Which a little thing about me, I am from Boulder. That's my birthplace. I was born in Boulder, Colorado. So that incident really touched me. But the incident in Atlanta with some of our Asian brothers and sisters, and so people don't realize how stressful that can be, especially if you identify with those communities. So again, a huge stressor, and really trying to work with these communities to try to help them find some type of healthy outlet. So then we have changes in immigration process and uncertainty for international students. I think about, what it's like for some of our international graduate students who may not feel comfortable being in the United States. I worked with a student who was about to graduate when the pandemic hit and was very fearful about A, not being able to walk, B, not being able to finish, or even C, not being able to have their family here. So those are all those kind of feed into those different stressors. Then, of course, we have financial concerns. A lot of our universities took big hits. And so that also affects from the top down. So if our executive or our administration are feeling it, I'm sure our different labs are feeling it. I'm sure that may be a cut in some funding. All those things are basically centered around financial concerns. And then finally, concerns about access to healthcare and adequate safety. We're all now, thankfully and prayerfully, there's a vaccine that is available for people who want to, feel like that this may be a way to combat COVID-19, but there's still some restrictions, or there's still some fear around that, which is definitely understandable. So these are all some stresses that came out during the pandemic. specifically for graduate students. Now, I also want to talk about just some overall challenges for graduate students and some of the challenges that graduate students face. And so, Annie gave me a list of questions that some of y'all has sent out, and so I hope to be able to answer some with this slide. If I'm not, please save them to the end, and I don't mind getting, answering those questions. But these are some, there's probably many, many more, but these are some of the issues that some of our graduate students face. And I think it's important for us to talk about that because, again, I want to normalize what we all are probably have experienced or are currently experiencing. And I also want to give some different ways to combat them. Okay. So for one thing, imposter syndrome. Now, you don't have to show a raise of hands, but I'm wondering how many people, and you would say this in your head, have felt like I am, I'm not real, right? I'm not, there's no way in the world I'm smart enough to be in this program. There's no way in the world I should be getting a PhD. Imposter syndrome affects people who struggle to accept their success. And rather than embrace their successes or intellect, they often believe that their achievements are merely just the result of luck. And what makes imposter syndrome so scary for a lot of people is that people are fearful that they're going to be found out. People are fearful that one day somebody's going to say, Vincent, you're really not as smart as you think you are. Or Bobby Joe, I have a question for you and I know you can't answer it. Right. And so one of the things that I think is important for programs and universities to do is to have more talk about imposter syndrome for graduate students. I think that it's important because, again, it normalizes the fact that a lot of students have feared this, have experienced this, but it also gives the students the tools necessary to challenge those negative thoughts. And so again, for some of the students that are on here, and I don't know if there's going to be faculties or PIs on here, I think it's beneficial to bring back some of the stuff that I say around some things that our programs to do back to your programs, because I think if they start to incorporate that in their curriculum, or just kind of like something to decide for the students to work with, I think that'll help them combat those thoughts. We also have a sense of belonging, right? And so think back to when you were an undergrad and you went to your undergrad school, whether it be University of Texas, NYU, where it be University of Florida. Most universities do a great job of really pulling in the students and getting them connected to the campus, right? As an undergrad. But think about you getting your master's degree. Think about you getting your PhD degree. There's not a lot of talk around, well, let's make sure our graduate students feel connected to the university, right? And so a lot of students have told me that once they make that transition from undergrad to grad school, one of the biggest hurdles that they had was just feeling connected or belonging to the university. I think one of the great ways that our programs could work with that is to create programs around mentorship and mentee and mentorship. I think that's important because I think the purpose of mentorship, of course, is to help guide the student through their process and through that journey. And I think that it's important for programs to see that as something that will help the students. So I think that I would definitely encourage that. I also think of grad councils. I'm not for sure if there's a grad council that's connected to the specific group, but I think that that's something important too. It gives the students the opportunity to talk about some of the issues that they have going on. It gives them a sense of network, and so I definitely do encourage our students to do that also. Also, isolation, right? Some of the students that I've worked with will say, I feel like I'm in a world on my own. I work, I go to school, I have a family or might have a family, but I'm not able to do a lot of stuff, right? And so I encourage our students to be a change agent, right? Communicate your needs to people. isolation doesn't have to be alone. Reach out to some of your colleagues, reach out to some of your professors, and let them know just what you're experiencing in the moment. And the last thing that I think is one of the biggest issues that our grad students face is time management, right? There is so much on your plate as a graduate student, right? So you may be coming in a new lab, you may be moving to a new city, you may have family and role responsibilities, you may be working 2 and 3 jobs, and all that can distract you from the work that you're doing in graduate school, right? And so I think that I would encourage our students to continue to be in a position to where you're going to things like this, right? When you see that things are offered around time management or healthy eating habits or how to develop a plan and schedule that best works for you as a grad student, please utilize those services. And whatever other services that you feel like you need, please utilize them and ask. I'll talk more about CAPS, the counseling services, but that's another services that is free for the students. So again, we'll continue to talk about those things, but I feel like these are some of the biggest challenges facing some of our graduate students. And then I just want to talk. Okay, somebody raise their hand.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I just maybe a reflection.
Yeah.
So I'm Siobhan, I'm a PI. Hi everybody.
Siobhan, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, hey, nice to meet you.
Your last slide, I think for me when I think about this, I recognize those as things, there were challenges I faced as a graduate student too.
Yeah.
Challenges I faced as a postdoc,
Yeah.
moving on at every step of my career. And I just, for me, it seems pretty important, just to add my voice to encourage people to like use resources to help learn how to positively fight against those things, because you're going to need those skills forever. And I wish I had had, more access to things to work on when I was a graduate student, because it would have made my life easier now.
Absolutely. And I think about it, it's so interesting. I even think about me being new to Penn. Time management is something that I'm still working on, and just trying to navigate everything and try to do everything in a way that is productive, and still try to get 8 hours of sleep, which that doesn't exist. So. But thank you. And again, please ask questions along the way. That'll be good. Okay, so then we have stressors of just navigating the academic system. And I think that academia is such a beautiful place. And when I interviewed for this job at Penn, one of the questions that they asked me was, why students? Why you want to continue to work with students? And I said, one, I love being a part of the trajectory of students from point A to point B. I think student involvement keeps me young. It keeps me open and new to all the different nuances of life. But also, I just love the system of academia. But it does come with some struggles. So again, I want to just talk about some of these struggles too, just to, again, and I'm gonna keep saying it just to normalize. I think Siobhan said something great, was that these are things that even in our professional world, we still can work on. So one of the things that, and I'll, and to save time too, I'm looking, being mindful of the time, I'll run through some of these a little bit quicker. These are some stresses that of navigating just the whole academic system in general. So of course we have what we call microaggressions, right? And I think about our students who have come from oppressive environments or who feel like they've been marginalized. They can still continue to feel those things in academia. I think that is I've experienced those type of things. I think if some of us are honest, we've all experienced some of those type of things. And so being in a graduate program, you can continue to still feel those things, and they're painful when you're going through them. I think of a lack of representation. Being a clinical counseling psychologist, there's not a lot of men in my field, and there's not a lot of Black men in my field. And so a lot of times when trying to navigate the journey of this thing of counseling and clinical psychology, I oftentimes didn't feel that there was somebody who I could relate to. I've worked with a lot of students who have also said those things, that they've been in spaces to where they're the only one, whether it be they're the only female, whether it be they're the only person who identifies as being Hispanic or Asian, or they're the only one that identifies as being LGBTQIA community. So these are all different ways people who don't feel represented could be stressed. Limited knowledge of resources. I'm thinking about all the resources that Penn have that somehow, some way, some of our students still are not able to, either they're not able to get, or either they just haven't been exposed to those different resources. And these are resources that can really be helpful to your progression through your program. I always think about, I worked with a student one time at another a previous institution, and as I'm talking about all these different things that they could do to get connected, they looked at me and said, "No, Vincent, where was I supposed to know that from? Who taught me that these things are here? Who communicated those things to me?" And so, these are so I was just taken aback because I feel like I know them because I'm in the system and I do them. But if they're not being communicated to people, not everybody gets to know those things. I think about family and financial stressors. One of the questions that was asked was, how do you manage being in a program or being in grad school when you have kids that are needing you and wanting you and stuff like that? And so I always encourage people to always communicate your needs, right? Excuse me, try your best to find somebody that you feel very supported by, or somebody that you feel very comfortable with, to express those needs to people. If people don't hear you, people don't know or understand, there's no way that people can help you. So I definitely encourage people to communicate their needs to people. Limited emotional support. um, I know for me, I can only speak for me. I had a great support system, but at times there was things that I was going through that only people who went through a PhD program would have understood, or going through a grad program would understand. And so it makes you feel isolated and limited to only being able to share your experience with a small group of people. We talk about trauma and being re-traumatized. There's a lot of us who have experienced trauma already, who have grad school can be a trigger of some of our trauma symptoms. And those are things that I encourage people, if that is the case for you, definitely get the help that you need for that. And again, we'll talk about CAPS and how that can help you later on. And then just feeling connected. I mean, I said this earlier in a previous slide, but again, a lot of people don't always feel connected to the university. Some people don't even feel connected in their lab. Some people don't feel connected in their program. And those are, and some of it could be a lot of things why you don't feel connected. But again, if you don't take anything away from this presentation, please communicate your needs to somebody, whether it be a PI, whether it be a colleague, whether it be a program manager, whether it be the chair, your advisor. Please share your experience so people can support and advocate for you. Okay, so I want to talk real quick about kind of the graduate school, graduate student mental health concerns, right? So what I wanted to, how I wanted to, I guess, approach it is just using the biopsychosocial model of health and illness, okay? And basically what it is, it's just a framework to develop, that was developed, that states that interactions between biological, psychological, and social factors determine the cause, manifestation, and outcomes of wellness and disease. And so a lot of times what people will ask me, well, yeah, I know what stress and anxiety looks like for me, right? But how can I find this? How can I see this in other people? Or I had some of our PIs and our professors ask me, so if I have a student who could be struggling, how would I even know that he's struggling? Or he or she, how would I know that he or she is struggling? So these are some of the things that I tell people. There are some signs that some of our students are struggling and may need some additional support. So for one, isolation. So if you see that one of your students who is very engaged in class and very engaged as a student, who's on time for things, is all of a sudden nowhere to be found, right? They're not feeling, you can't, they don't come to class, they're isolating themselves from other people. Maybe some of their colleagues that says, Dr. Such and such, I've noticed that Jill, the other day. I went to her. I wanted to connect with her. I went to her room, and she just wouldn't want to get out of bed. Those type of things. That could be a sign that this individual needs some additional support. Um, I think about substance use and addiction. Some of our students use that as a way of coping, right? It's an unhealthy way of coping. I think that that would be a sign, and that the student needs some additional support. Fluctuations in mood. One time, an individual may be happy and excited and loving the world, and next minute they may be very sad or withdrawn or distraught or extremely anxious. I also think about sleep and appetite change. So if you're working with somebody and they're telling you, I'm sleeping way too much, I'm getting like 12, 15, 16 hours of sleep, and it's hard for me to get out of bed. Or I'm not sleeping enough because I'm always worried about my lab. I'm always worried about what's going to be am I going to get that recommendation letter on time? Or if they say, I'm eating too much, or I'm not eating enough, food can also be an unhealthy coping mechanism. Again, these are signs that individuals may need some additional support. Of course, we got shame. Relationship conflicts could be another sign. But one thing that people don't, that may be new to them, is body image concerns, right? So for some people, because some people use food as an unhealthy coping mechanism, weight gain and weight loss is something that a lot of students say that they struggle with in graduate school. And I think that that is something important for our professors or our admin to see. If you see some really extreme weight gain or weight loss with some of your students, that could be a sign that, again, this is somebody that needs some additional support. And of course, we got the physiological symptoms too. And some of those symptoms look like, excessive headaches, stomach aches, skin problems. If a student comes to you and say, I feel like I just don't, every time I'm waking up, I'm having these severe stomach cramps. Again, this is something that an individual might need some additional support. I love this picture. It's not specific just to grad students. Specific to first year students. But I think that this is a great picture of the tension that we see within academia with our students and our administration, right? We see these students excelling and doing well, but there's so much stuff going on. They're under so much pressure. They're talking about their finances, family, what other different identities that they have that they're struggling with. But yet we have the administration that may see this as, but they're doing so well. And if they really needed something, I'm sure that they would ask. And so again, I think this picture really kind of highlights the tension that the students and some of our administration may have. So again, this is only if you feel comfortable, okay? So as we kind of make a transition into some of the supportive ways to combat these things, I just want to ask, what personal challenges have you faced as a graduate student? Now, of course, if you don't feel comfortable, sharing that, that's fine. But it doesn't always have to be what you think. So maybe it's, maybe one of your colleagues has told you a struggle that they had, or maybe one of your parents who was in grad school said that, or maybe just something that you just know that a lot of grad students struggle with. What are some personal challenges? What personal challenges have you or somebody faced as a graduate student? And my friend Annie will help me with that when people.
Yeah, and while people are thinking and writing, there was a comment about your earlier slide that unfortunately, many people don't listen to the signs, especially in the fields of research where PIs or bosses do their own way of advising and faculty just accepts that. So that sometimes means that there's no one that listens or no one that cares. Sometimes it's just, then you don't fit in here. And that seems to be, for this person, one of the most common answers to these types of problems.
Yeah. That's a good point. One of the things that I feel like my job as a clinician, as a therapist, is not just to help counsel people. Another part of my job is advocacy. And so I always tell students who I work with, I am not only a therapist, but I'm an advocate. And so one of the things that I work with, or that I want to pride myself on, is being an advocate for students. And I think a lot of my colleagues would say the same. And so if you ever feel comfortable, coming to the counseling center and saying, I'm feeling that there's nobody there that's supportive of me, I hope you get that experience there. Or I hope that we can connect you to the resources that you need to help you kind of transition along the way.
Another student, Nico, says, in terms of challenges, definitely the work-life balance
Yeah.
mixed with imposter syndrome.
I agree with that, Nico. Okay, so the next thing we have is resilient, right? And this is where I like to encourage. I'm a very positive psychology person, right? I like to put great things in the atmosphere. All my colleagues that are here on this call, on this Zoom, we're all resilient people. And I think there's a little tagline within there that says, "Be like the bamboo, bend but do not break." And I think that is one of the key things that is um, so amazing about grad students, right? Is that we can be flexible, and we can be flexible, and we can take the bumps and blows of life. And no matter how rough it may be, there's always, I just hope that people can continue to be encouraged in their journey. And so I just want to put that out there to kind of break it's like very heavy with stresses. Now let's talk about how we can work through that. Okay. So what are some strengths of our grad students, right? So again, like I stated at first, the first one is flexibility. Um, I remember some of the students I've worked with who said, you know what, not only do I work 30 hours a week, I run 2 labs, I teach, I do this, I do that, and I'm still trying to maintain good grades, right? And so again, I think that we are flexible. Graduate students learn to be very flexible. They learn to persevere, right? Grad school is not easy. Grad school is not, for some people, grad student isn't a set 2, 3, 4, 5 years. When I was at Howard, I bought this T-shirt, and the T-shirt said, "Howard, the best 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of my life," which meant that regardless of how many long it took for me to finish, I finished. But you got to persevere, and I think that that's important for grad students to learn. Just that's a strength that we have. I think about being patient. How many times have you been in labs and your lab has not gone out the way you wanted it? How many times have you had to defer, um, you know, things because of grad school? It's an ability that we learn being patient because we know that there's a better reward at the end. Being self-disciplined. I think I commend all grad students right now. Every single last student who has been able to continue to maintain interest and motivation through Zoom life. I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I could have done that. Sitting down and staring at a computer for days in and days out. I just want to commend y'all for doing that work. But in order to do that, it requires you to be self-disciplined. And then just have a genuine passion for learning. I've asked some people, excuse me, why are you in why are you getting the degree you're in, or why do you want to get a master's degree, or why you want to get a PhD? Some people say, well, it's the money. I want to be able to make a lot of money one day. Some people have said, oh well, it's the only thing that I could do in order to get into this type of field I want. But there are some people who really just want to get a PhD or a master's degree just because they have the passion for learning. I remember I had a high school teacher named Gwendolyn Phillips. Miss Phillips was probably like, I think she's like 75 or 76 when I was a senior in high school. And I never forget, she told us that never, ever, ever stop learning. Fall in love with the process of learning. She told us that when she graduated from high school, she took 2 weeks off. She went and traveled around, the United States, came back, and she has been in some type of class ever since, just because she loved the passion. She just loved learning. And so I feel like that is a strength for a lot of our graduate students. Okay. I meant to take this slide out, the next slide out, so I'm gonna skip over that one and go straight into the support for mental health with 3 Ps, right? So support mental health with 3 Ps. So one is be proactive. Two is connect with other people, and three is seek professional help. So how do you be proactive, right? And I think being proactive is identifying signs of stress and develop your own coping toolbox, right? And so again, and being proactive or identifying, that is why I wanted to go over what are different stressors, right? A lot of times the students that I've worked with said, I never even know I was really struggling with anything because this I've just been so used to feeling this way and not realizing that that's a stressor for me. So definitely being able to identify what are some of your struggles, what are some of your stresses, but also being able to take feedback that maybe you are struggling with something, and it doesn't mean that you're less than. One of the things that I had to do, and I don't mind, kind of sharing my journey, but one year I had a lot of stuff going on. Now I was taking my comprehensive exams. I was getting ready for my dissertation proposal. I had two family deaths, all within one semester. And I remember my advisor pulling me aside and saying, Vincent, I see that you're doing well. See that you're making it. She said, but how are you really feeling? And I mean, it took everything in me not to hold back this just gush of just tears because I really was struggling. And so when I told her kind of how I was feeling, she gave me the feedback to say, we as a program care enough for you that we want to support you by saying, let's work on getting you some additional support and some additional help, and let's see what that looks like. I think about the second P, connect with other people. Connect with people and talk with people that you trust. Social support is also what we call a protective factor, right? You know, it's I just don't, and it can be done. It can be done, but I don't see how people can go through a program with not having a social support system to help feed and pour into them. I think it's important for all of our students. I encourage it. I love to help people. Okay, let's find some people to get into your network. I don't mind being a therapist a part of your network, but to a limited degree. But we can also help you find other people outside of the counseling center to help you with that. So I definitely encourage people to have a good support system. And then finally, to seek professional help. When you get to a point where you're in your life where you feel like, I've been struggling with this stuff for so long, I just don't know how I can maintain. I don't know how it's going to get better. Please seek out professional support or professional help. Whether even if you're saying, what, I don't really know about counseling. It seems cool. I don't feel comfortable with that. I encourage people, go to a first session, go to one session, just see what it's like. You can always say, "Nah, I don't think this is for me," or even say, "Well, I'm open to referrals." Some of our students have said to us, "I wouldn't mind going to a therapist on campus, but I'm afraid that somebody might find out." Right. So as far as confidentiality, everything you say stays between you and the clinician, unless you talk about harm to yourself or anyone else. If you talk about harm to vulnerable populations, so that's children, elderly, disabled, people who can't protect themselves, all those things a therapist would have to report. And if by some chance a therapist is subpoenaed for your records, doesn't mean that they have to testify against you. It just means they have to acknowledge the subpoena, and then y'all would go from there. So those are the limits of confidentiality. Everything else you can say and do, and will be protected from anybody understanding. But let's say that's still not enough for you. We also do referral fees for you to go out to the community. So again, we have all type of systems and support to help you with your mental health needs. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about self-care myths, right? So I'm sure people have heard this before when people say, "Well, you know what? I hear about this talk, or I hear about self-care, but what does that even look like, right?" And some people will say, "Well, if I do self-care, if I add that, into my daily life, isn't that being selfish, right? And so I think about that, and um, I think about me being a student when I was a student, right? And to me, self care was watching movies. I loved movies. And so I could sit there and watch an hour, 2 hour movies. But during the process of me watching the movie, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, man, I got 2 papers to write that I do on Monday. I got to write up some notes for my internship. I got to work on this. I got to work on that. And so it was defeating the point of me using self care to help me just kind of refocus. Another myth is that self-care is one more thing I have to do. It becomes, for some people, they make self-care almost a chore. And self-care is supposed to be great. Self-care is supposed to help you just manage life better. But for some people, self-care becomes just another thing to check off on their list. And also some people feel that there's just one right way to do self-care, right? I feel like self-care is me taking all 8 hours of the day and just doing absolutely nothing, or indulging in all these different things. And it's like, well, no, there's many, many, many ways that you can engage in self-care. And some of those ways are here. So what does self-care look like for some people, right? So one, asking for help. That's huge, right? If you know that you are struggling in so many different areas of your life, whether it be mental, whether it be physical, whether it be academic, whether it be relationship, and you feel like I just can't continue to do this by myself, part of self care can be just for you asking for help. Asking for help from individuals that care about you and who really want you to be supported. Spending time alone. Um, I see nothing wrong with saying, you know what, it's starting to get warmer now. Part of what I'm gonna do for self-care is I'm just gonna take a walk by myself. I'm gonna tell my spouse, I'm gonna tell my kids, I'm gonna tell my colleagues, my friends, I'm gonna dedicate Sunday from 5 to 6 to myself, where I'm just alone with myself and my thoughts. Putting yourself first. Um, that's a part of being of self-care. I think about how ambitious grad students are, and thinking about all the many different roles that we have to do. And a lot of times we put other people first. It's just that's because naturally who we are. But part of, again, of self-care is really just being okay with saying, you know what, yeah, I know there's some things that I need to do, but I really need to focus on myself right now. And if not, and what when I got, so I have a master's degree in public health, also health education, health promotion. And I remember one of my professors, the very first class he said to us is that you cannot help other people if you cannot first help yourself. So if you cannot see where your struggles are, or your growth edges are, and you're trying to help other people, you're not always going to be effective. Also, asking for what you need. Again, that's part of self-care. Is saying, communicating your needs. I work with grad students, and I think one of the things that frustrates some of our students is they say, I feel like I don't have any control. My advisor is controlling when I can present. My PI is controlling what we do in the lab. I just don't feel like there's any control that I have. But I work with students by saying, let's work on helping you find the control that you can control, right? You can't control other people, but you can control some things that are in your network. And so and by doing that, I encourage students to express your needs to people. A lot of times people don't know what you need because students are not saying what they need. So just encouraging people to do that. Another self-care is setting boundaries, setting firm boundaries. And so this was a question that came up. How do you set boundaries in a program? And so I tell people with setting boundaries is just to know your limits. Know where at what point is too much too much. At what point is enough enough. Those type of things, right? So really knowing and understanding that, of course, communicating your needs, be direct when it comes to boundaries. Be firm in those boundaries. If one of my colleagues had a firm boundary about um, not doing work on Sundays. She was very firm about that. She said that is the day I rest. That I use as for a self-care day. I go get my hair done. I go do my nails. I go get a massage. Sunday's it. And we were studying for our comprehensive exam, and everybody kept saying, "Well, let's just study on Sunday." And she stayed firm and direct. And no, This is private time for me. I don't mind doing any other day after the week, but I cannot do Sunday. So again, setting good boundaries and giving yourself permission to set boundaries is something that's very important in boundary setting. Also staying at home, saying no. I think that's huge. Let me say it again. Saying no is a part of self-care also. I think, and I was a yes man when I was in grad school. I know I'd have 50, 11 things to do, and I'd have a professor to say, well, Vincent, I know you got a lot of stuff going on, but do you mind reviewing this paper for me? Sure, sure, I could do that. Knowing good and well that was going to be so stressful for me and was going to impede in my self-care. So learning no early is huge. Also, forgiving yourself for making mistakes, forgiving yourself for not sticking with your boundaries. It's interesting to me that we are as individuals, we're so quick to forgive other people, but we struggle with forgiving ourselves for just different things. And so forgiveness is definitely a part of self care. And finally, taking a step back, just taking a step back, just to assess what is going on in front of you, assess where you are in life, assess what you need. All those things can make up what is good, what is self care, and what self care can be. So, what are some self care strategies for just by yourself, right? So, you're by yourself. You're wondering like, what can I do to really pour into myself? And so, as far as on an emotional level, is gratitude. So, one of the things I I encourage my students to do is, or the students that I work with, is I tell them every day I want you to just write something that you're thankful for, and not something that's outside of school or academics. So people have said, I'm just thankful for the fact that I have a loving and supportive family. People say I'm grateful for the fact that I'm learning how to manage my life better. And I say that to say that sometimes when we're in those really negative low moments, I tell them bring out that book of your of gratitude, the things that you're that you're grateful for, and read those things. And a lot of times people say, it's encouraged me to say like, yeah, I remember those things. This is great. And so hopefully it can help you kind of get out of that negative space. Journaling is great. Crying and laughing is great. Sometimes, I'm not a huge crier, but I think the older I get, songs make me cry, movies make me cry. I'm just telling you all my emotional business now, right? But it's a release, right? It's a release of just the stress and tension that I'm experiencing every day. And then meditation, just being by yourself. I love. I'm not a big yogi yet, but I love yoga, and I think yoga is important. But even just sitting somewhere and just listening to quiet music, or just being in a space where it's just you and nature and your thoughts, can definitely be a good strategy for self care. As far as physical, we had this thing what we call grounding, and I don't have I've encouraged people to use like grounding stones, and so this is when you're stressed or you're feeling overwhelmed. It's something that this is not a stone. This is the cap of a highlighter, but just imagine if it's a stone. But using that, rubbing this through your fingers, feeling the sensation, trying to level yourself down to a equilibrium part, right? So when I think about a baseline part. So when I think about anxiety, but here's baseline. When you're above your baseline, it's hard for you to just manage life. So using grounding techniques to get you back down to baseline to make a more healthy decision for yourself. Sleep. I know I don't know about y'all, but I have outgrown overnighters. I cannot, if I stayed up all night, it'd take me almost 2 weeks to recover from that. But in grad school, I could do it, and I still be struggling, but I could bounce back sooner. So sleep is important. Eating healthy or eating right. A lot of times we like to, some people may binge eat, some people may not eat enough, some people may only focus on carbs, and really kind of push away some of the healthy food items. But I think that's important for your body to continue to stay healthy. And then exercise. Exercise is a way of self-care. I know for a lot of people, me included, we're struggling with not being able to go to the gym, but there's alternative ways that individuals can use exercise as a self-care strategy. And also, as far as just being creative, like, you know, find a new hobby that you like as a way of self-care. I actually have I actually love puzzles now. And it's very interesting. And I think that the reason why I like puzzles was because I think, you know, you have 5,000 pieces, but it takes your mind off of the stress and anxiety of the world, and that you're just sitting there putting together puzzles. So find kind of creative ways that you feel like can you can incorporate in self-care. Um, then there's also ways you can involve self-care with others, a relationship. So talking to your friends and family or those that you trust is a way of self-care. I think a lot of our families, our family members and our friends or our social support are very much in the dark about what grad students go through, and that's because nobody's telling them what they're going through. I remember my dad; he had a vision of getting a PhD as something that it's just you just go to class. I mean, it's nothing. You know, then you write this paper called a dissertation, and it was somebody else who explained to him like a dissertation is a book, you know. And so then he kind of, you know, he kind of realized like, oh, so that's why Vincent's stressing out so much. So yeah, so being able to talk to them about that. As far as academic, creating communities of support. I think that this is important for individuals to use this as a way to communicate your needs to other people. I know that some of our programs are not perfect. I know that some of the people we worked with are not as open as one would like. But I do think it's important to still try to communicate your needs to somebody that you feel like you can be connected with. And if anything, especially if you're here at Penn, if you're saying, you know, I don't feel like there's anybody in my program, anybody in my department, I just don't feel like there's nobody I can connect with to really tell them how I am feeling, please come to the counseling center. If anything, we can help you process ways to do that. Or again, we can be advocates for you. There's no reason why at Penn that I don't want any student to walk away feeling like there was nobody here that actually cared about them, because there are plenty of people here. We just want to help connect you with those individuals. So there's also spiritual community. So connecting with the religious or spiritual community, engaging in activism. I know somebody said earlier that one of the things that they're struggling with right now is the voting rights. You know, I'm struggling with that too. I'm right with you. But maybe even just, you know, find ways to write legislation, you know, find communities that are saying, you know, hey, let's all get together and go to a protest. I know there was a protest yesterday, I think for some of our Asian brothers and sisters within the community. You know, those are ways that people can use for self-care to just to kind of focus, not always on academia. And also, again, therapy. Therapy is important. I think everybody in the world should go to therapy. I think therapy was great for me. I'm an advocate for it. And I think that is something that could definitely be helpful for our students. And that brings us to CAPS. So CAPS is our psychological services here. We are highly trained. We have a very diverse staff of various identities and specialties. You know, for me, one of my specialties is that I love working with people of color, marginalized individuals. I love working with people who I've worked with males before. That's one of my specialties. Trauma. I'm a trauma fellow, so I've worked with a lot of people around sexual assault and sexual abuse, males and females, and so we have a lot of people who come in with a lot of great identities and specialties, and so we hopefully we can connect you to somebody there. We of course we offer multicultural counseling. We have a short-term care model. And I'm gonna be honest with you, that's different everywhere you go. Here at Penn, basically we try to identify one or two of your biggest issues and use the time that we work with you to focus on those issues and hopefully decrease those issues or help you manage those. And again, services are free and confidential. Some of our programs or some of our schools have psychologists or therapists actually embedded in the school or the department, so that's been helpful too. Um, let's see here. How to access CAPS? You can call us at the number above. Um, uh, During COVID, all of our services have been virtual, but I think our students are still gaining a lot from that. We do individual and group therapy. A lot of people ask me, so what's the difference between individual and group therapy, right? So individual therapy, of course, is one-on-one. Group therapy is within a group of, usually there's a core theme for the group. It could be a group for people who struggle with anxiety, people who struggle with depression, a group for individuals who are survivors of sexual assault, all those groups. I tell people group therapy is just as beneficial as individual therapy. With group therapy, you get the input from other people, plus usually two other facilitators. So that's definitely helpful. I'm leading a group for COVID-19 individuals who have had COVID-19 and are struggling from the physical part of COVID-19 still. So if there's anybody in the presentation that is interested in that, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I'll definitely help you with that. Here are some self-care resources, and this can be all found on our page. There's a self-care assessment. There's a COVID and mental health, which I think is great because it basically just talks about ways for you to manage your mental health through these COVID times. There's things on self-care and mindfulness. Mindfulness is a new, well, not a new technique, but it's a technique that really helps people just manage their stress better. And then, of course, we have our you can follow us at wellness at Penn, so for some other additional things. And that's not, these services and resources are not just, well, the resources are not just for Penn students, it's for anybody on the call that's not even connected to Penn, but the service are strictly just for Penn students. And again, it's free. Well, nothing in life is free, right? It's free, you already paid for it. So, but the services are free. And again, so if you would like to get, I would encourage you to give me feedback or give the presentation feedback. You can do that by typing in www.upencaps.com/feedback. You know what? I messed up on this. The workshop is name. We'll just do anxiety. No, we'll do support and grad students. Okay. All right. Okay, let me save this. It never fails. You always find one thing that it's like, man, I wish I would have caught that beforehand. Okay. All right. Now we're back to presentation mode. So again, the workshop name would just say support and grad students. Presenter Vincent Walford. And again, I hope that this presentation was useful. I hope that you learned a lot from it. And I am now open to answer any questions.